Our last topic today is waiver integration. And when I say waiver integration, I'm referring to our 7 1915C waivers. This would take those 1915C waivers and integrate them into the 1115 waiver authority. Really, to do that, in doing that, we want to create parity for all populations across ACBS services, and really believe there should be a personalized plan of care based on the individual's needs and not really their disability, which is defined by those silos within those 1915Cs. It would really allow, again, offer a variety of services, different services. For example, some individuals who might qualify for one waiver could qualify for the other waiver, but what they're restricted to is one set of services within their defined waiver. So you can't reach across for a service in another waiver and provide that service, even if it would be beneficial to the individual. The goal here is to allow entrance to the HCBS services. The waivers will remain the same, so there will be basically 7 different eligibility pathways into these 2 groups in which we would like to have with the children's services group and the adult services group. So there, with questions to consider, what we'd like you to do, what barriers have you experienced in the current waiver system? What services would you like to have that state consider for any integrated waivers? On what timeline would you like to see waiver integration? And what would you want to make sure to preserve in waiver integration? So Amy, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
All right, so Mike mentioned those 7 1915C waivers. I'm just going to read those out so folks know what those are. The first one that came to my mind was the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Waiver. You might have also heard about the Physical Disabilities Waiver. There's one for the frail elderly. That's a separate waiver. There's also one for folks with traumatic brain injuries, or TBI. There's another waiver for children with serious emotional disturbance. There's a waiver also for children that need technology assistance. And there's a waiver for children who are diagnosed with autism. So those are the 7 1915C waivers. In these questions are about those current waivers. This might not apply to everybody in the room, but you might have somebody at your table where you could learn a little bit about how their experiences on these home and community-based waivers has affected their lives. And so I hope you get to have a good conversation about that. So thank you everyone who turned to a new page on your flip chart. Do note on your flip chart which question you're answering and a few of your ideas as you respond. Let's take about 10 minutes to talk about these questions. What we're going to do for the last round of call-outs is start at this front table. We'll hear from this last third of the room. The call-out questions are the same. I'm interested in knowing what question you discussed and one of your responses to that question.
We picked number 4 to keep what would be needed to keep in waiver integration. We decided that assessment needs to remain with clinically trained master's level individuals who are familiar with the diagnosis and the array of service to produce the best result and outcome. Also that assessment and treatment should resemble the current medical model. For example, if somebody had the flu, one person wouldn't diagnose them and then send them to somebody else to give them medication for the flu.
Okay, good comments on what should be kept, and you thought the high quality, high level of education for the assessor is important. Thank you.
So we discussed, number 1, what barriers have you experienced in the current waiver system?
Great.
And actually the discussion centered around the fact that many people aren't aware of the waiver system. They don't know that it's available to them, and so therefore they don't apply for the services that they need.
Okay. So knowledge about the waivers and who they are for would be important to share. Thank you.
We picked question number 1, which was which barriers have you experienced in the current waiver system?
Could you speak up just a little?
Sure. So our biggest barrier that we found was there's not enough access for services, and that's kind of a twofold system, in that there's not enough waiver spaces available for people who are in need of services, and also there is not enough authorization for services provided to make sure that the support is there for the people on the waiver.
Okay, so spots on the waiver and services available once folks get on the waiver.
Yeah, we also had a question about what's the intent of these changes at this point, because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of transparency in why we're doing this at this point.
Okay, so question for the state to consider is what is the intent and making sure folks understand why waiver integration is being pursued. Thank you. Next table.
Okay, I'm not sure we answered any of the questions. Our
Okay.
recommendation is not to integrate the waivers. We feel like it's really a solution looking for a problem at this point. We feel like the major issue is that the waivers are under-resourced right now, and more change is not real positive for our system right now.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So we're recommending not integrating waivers and rather better resourcing the current waiver system. Okay, next table.
To be honest, we were much like the previous table, answering the first one. There are a lot of barriers to the waiver system that we see, and integrating them seems more of it would be a challenge for the state rather than a cost-saving measure, which I'm sure this is what's driving this. We kind of understand that KDHE and KDADS are both under budgetary constraints. We're aware of what the issues are, and I feel like a lot of this is driven mostly as a way to ration out services to different clientele, both patients and whatever for different groups. And so we understand the pressure that Secretary Mosier and Interim Secretary Keck are up against and how to integrate all this. But I think one of our biggest questions would be, what are we doing on the other end? What are they doing to advocate for the provider network? What are they doing to advocate for the clients, the patients, and everybody that are out here, you know, kind of having those services cut or rationed out? And the question we would have is, what are they doing to the governor or legislators or on our behalf?
Okay, interesting question for the state to keep in mind as they go forward. What are the secretaries doing to advocate for the providers and the clients? All right, next table.
Our concerns are that one size does not necessarily fit all, and in the case of an integrated waiver, it's not going to fit anybody very well.
Okay.
That the considerations are different for each of for the different waivers for a reason. And as far as a timeline, it should not be integrated until there's legislative approval, and we've seen more details of the plan.
Okay, so more details of the plan and legislative approval are what you would like to see for waiver integration, and you want to make sure that the needs of the clients are still able to be met. Okay. Next table, what question did you address?
We looked at question number 2. Full disclosure, I'm a state legislator, brand new. I'm here with my son, who's HCBS, looking for answers.
Okay.
We know what we don't want. We want to
Welcome.
know what we do want. So we addressed question number 2. We want to make sure that the current client protections are in place if we do an integration waiver. And also, I need to see how costs are saved and how the population is helped by the waiver integration.
Okay, so more information about how costs are saved and the population is served by integrating waivers, and also making sure that the client protections are in place. Very good, very important, thank you. Next table.
We had a lot of discussion about the waiver integration questions. We focused on number 3 on the timeline. I think we'd like to say don't rush. Seems like there's a lot of details still to work out with what assessments are going to be used, what the fee structures will be. There's just a lot of details that haven't been shared with anybody, and so. But it seems like we're pushing forward with this idea that we're going to integrate, but there's no details of how or what that's going to look like.
Okay, so sharing more information about what details might have been sorted out and what details haven't, and getting that out to folks would be helpful. All right, next table.
Well, we kind of talked about number 2, what services would you like to, sorry, I can't read it.
What services would you like the state to consider for any integrated waivers?
With that, I think we need to think about what we're doing now before the integrated, like for the home and community-based waiver. We have a lot of people that we're serving that are duly diagnosed, and we're having issues even getting support with anything there. You need assistance with mental illness, and they tell you, we can't help you because you're IDD. Well, yes, they are both. So who's choosing what disability that you're going to serve first? If a person is having a manic episode, the person doesn't really need to be in jail, but that's kind of where they're landing. And then they say, well, we can't keep them in jail. This is not where they belong. So you need them screened by a mental health center, and they have 4 hours to even show up to screen why somebody's having a manic episode. And then once the 4 hours are up, they call you and say, oh, we just can't make it. Can we do this by Skype? It's not working.
Yeah, thank you so much for
we need
sharing
some
that
help there.
experience about how we need to think about how to better serve people who are diagnosed both with mental illness and with a disability. Thank you.
We answered number 2 is what we
Okay.
discussed. And what we would kind of like to see, if the waiver integration does actually move forward, due to the excessively high patient loads that the case managers currently have at the insurance companies and cost savings being at the forefront of their assessments, I'd really like to see case management be brought back into the waiver and to have outside case management sources versus that being done by the insurance companies.
Is there a particular waiver you're thinking of in this case?
All of them.
Okay, so case management available in all waivers is your recommendation. I hear a lot of support for that idea. Okay, next table.
We looked at question number 1, and our table didn't really, we don't know too much about the waiver system, but we wanted to make sure that the waivers are readable, that they're actually, the print on them are large enough, and that they're understandable by the people that are filling out the waivers, because sometimes the wording that's used is extremely confusing.
So plain language and easier to read forms to fill out would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, I think we have 2 more tables to go.
And we addressed question number 1, and we are concerned that we still haven't gotten a lot of the implementation issues resolved from the current waiver that we are in, to be able to consider even combining a number of the waivers, and concern that any combination of adding in all of the waivers to do what it will do with the backlog, how you're going to handle the reimbursement methodology, all of those things. So it seems like we need to make sure we have the current program working well before we jump in and try to do something else.
Okay, so make sure the current system is working well before you integrate waivers. Thank you for your recommendations. Okay, 1 more table to go.
Okay, we talked about a lot of things. Want to focus comments on barriers and barrier related to waiting list. And if there is integration, how is waiting list integrated so that people will be able to have access if they're coming in 7 different pathways? Will everyone be able to have access at the same time, or will you have to wait longer depending on what your diagnosis is?
Great question. So how will the current waiting list system interact if the waivers are integrated? How will that affect people being able to come into the different waivers? Thank you. Did we get every table answered? Okay, great. So we have 2 more sections in our meeting today. First, I'll invite Mike back up to share a little bit more about other potential changes the state is considering and some ways to keep in touch. And then I'll come back up with a few more announcements. All right, Mike.
Thank you, Amy. A couple of other issues that we are considering as we move forward with the renewal for KanCare. You can see this. Strengthening the supports to obtain and maintain competitive integrated employment within our population, potentially use of block grant structure for Kansas Medicaid services, and then really why we're here and as we go forward, other suggestions that you might have as we go forward with this renewal process. And speaking of the renewal, input. Many of you may not have had the opportunity to share your input, or you may go home and think of something that you would like to share with us. So after today, as you can see, if you have additional feedback or questions, you can submit those to this email address on the screen here, and I believe you have a copy of that on your table as well. Public hearings will continue, as I said earlier, in August, once we have the draft application and it's been posted and the notifications have gone through that process. And really, go to our website, www.kancare.ks.gov, and really check for updates. Amy said it earlier, but we will have a copy of this presentation, and we'll have the answers to the questions that you presented on that website, but you have to give us some time in which to do that. And on behalf of myself, KDHE, and our staff that are here, and KDADS and their staff that are here, I sincerely want to thank you for your participation today, for being here, for taking the time to be here. We sincerely appreciate your candor, we appreciate your feedback, and we look forward to speaking with you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, 4 final announcements. 1, again, on your table, you have a half sheet about an upcoming tour that'll be happening June 14, 15, 16, and 17. That'll be particularly relevant to people who are receiving services on the home and community-based services waivers, the ones that we just discussed. So keep an eye out for particular details about locations for those info sessions coming up. Announcement 2. There are additional meetings in this round of information sessions. We have one more tonight here in Wichita at 5:30, and another one tonight in Kansas City at 5:30. And then we have 2 tomorrow in Pittsburgh and 2 tomorrow in Hayes. So if you have friends or relatives or coworkers around the state, let them know about that they can come to those meetings. 3rd, if you haven't already, please sign in on the lime green sheet on your table. That would be very helpful. And 4th, we mentioned earlier the KanCare Ombudsman Program, and I'm excited to let you know that Lainey in the back is here to represent that program. If there's anybody here with personal concerns related to you or a loved one's care and services, Lainey is here to take some questions, and she can help you identify resources. So Lainey's in the back there, and she'll be out in the lobby as we conclude the meeting. I echo Mike, and I thank you so much for your time and attention today. Have a good afternoon.